All right. Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be lecturing on progressivism. You've been filling in your guided notes for this. Um, so on Friday we talked about what is progressives, what is progressivism, who is typically would be involved in this. We talked about some muckrakers and jungle disgusting story about how the muckrakers are going to change the food industry. So today we're focusing on some of the achievements and influential people of the progressives. And it all starts with Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was a president in the early 1900s, and he's going to be the champion of progressive and change in the United States. When people needed a hero to rise against the corruption and greed of the corporations, this man, Teddy Roosevelt, is going to basically tackle all those issues and fight against the rich corporations. So he's been the first progressive president. As you can see in the slide here, he fought really hard to end corruption in government and influence of large corporations. Um, so one of the things that he campaigned on was something called the Square Deal. He's going to campaign to bring fairness to workers by really controlling and honing the powers of big business. So giving workers more rights and have a chance for a better life. Think about all the things we've learned about over the course of the Gilded Age. With like lack of worker rights, unions weren't all that popular, at least at first, because of the corruption of the governments. So, you know, so Teddy Roosevelt was not afraid to fight against the rich corporations that had a lot of power. Um, so. Um, Now, Teddy Roosevelt, he will become known as the trust buster, breaking up trusts, breaking up monopolies, again, and bringing fairness and justice to the workers. Let's see here. So we go. So you see this picture here, Teddy Roosevelt in the middle of this cartoon, the lions. Think about, why would the cartoonist put lions in this cartoon? Lions are meant to be the king of the jungle, powerful animals, fierce, and ultimately these are representative of business. You see right here, it's kind of hard to see, but you see like the beef trust, oil trust, steel trust. So at the time, these are like all each line represents a big business, a powerful business. In the beginning part of the 1900s, you had beef, you had oil, you had steel, railroads, etc. That had huge amounts of power in the United States. And you see Teddy Roosevelt standing right in the middle of them, fearless, with his with his whip, whipping the lions into shape. And you see like this lion down here is like bowing to him. So that's ultimately what this obviously this cartoon is meant to show strength and power of Teddy Roosevelt. And the fearlessness of him to tackle again the powerful corporations during this time. Um, so obviously, you can tell by there, Teddy Roosevelt would be a very popular president amongst like the workers. You can probably make the connection that not very popular amongst the corporations. All right, so going into some reforms. Um, as you guys saw in the Ed puzzle last week, there are different aspects of the progressives that they wanted to tackle. One was social reforms, society. So one dealt with housing. So one of the things that they wanted to fix was the housing problems that many of the urban poor had to deal with. The tenements were awful. There were very little building requirements, restrictions on the builders of the homes and tenants, landlords. So obviously, this bill is going to put more requirements on landowners, make sure that they're providing adequate care for those that live there. So one example of a progressive reform would be the Tenement Bill Act in New York. This will require new tenements built to be built around courtyards. We can get some fresh air, green space. Windows have to open, bathroom in each apartment. There were building codes that the landlords and the building construction people had to make to provide adequate housing for these people. They had to provide areas where they could build playgrounds or parks, somewhat near these locations, provide for families and kids so they can have something to go to and something to play. There has to be a hospital within a certain amount of range of these locations. Each city had to create its own sanitation department. Obviously, we talked about sanitation was not the best during this time, and obviously we had to increase the police to make sure that to again provide more care for our urban poor. Other big thing, guess you guys saw this in the ed puzzle. A lot of the problems, especially crime, was blamed on alcohol. Alcohol was a root to a lot of these issues. At least that's what they thought. They thought alcoholism was immoral. So you had movements, especially with women and Christian religious groups, that were campaigning to basically stop alcohol. Um, so we'll talk more about this when we get to our 20s unit, but that actually will be a thing. They actually will ban alcohol for about 12 years in the United States. They'll call it prohibition. But a lot of these movements started during the Gilded Age. Women's rights movement started propping up to provide women the right to vote. Again, we'll talk more about this later on, but again, they eventually will gain the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, as you guys see here. That's one of the amendments you'll need to know for your guys' state tests. This will provide voting rights for women, expand the electorate to give women more voice and more power in our government. And then African Americans as well, they'll have the creation of the NAACP. This is a very, very powerful group that fights for African American rights and fights for equality in education and in the workplace. Um, so this is a very powerful group that will form during this time. Start looking out for African American interests for that equality. So that's obviously going to be a big stepping stone in the right direction for social justice. All right, workplace is also a big problem. So unions were helping out adult male workers, but progressives were looking to help, women and children, where unions necessarily wasn't really focusing on that quite as much. So progressives looked to fix on these two groups of people. So Florence Kelly, you guys saw her in the video and the Ed Puzzle. She was very influential in providing movements. For instance, you guys saw in Illinois the banning of child labor, and it also will limit the amount of working hours for women. So led to Oregon 10-hour work days, Utah 8-hour work days. So a lot of these things are up to states. States would pass a lot of this progressive reform to limit child labor or the amount of working hours that would be allowed. On a national level, though, you see the founder of the National Child Labor Committee will be created to start looking into some of these issues and injustices nationwide. You see a minimum wage law that will be created in 1912 in Massachusetts, and then from there you start seeing other states passing their own minimum wage laws into what they are today. So each state has their own different minimum wage law, but again, Massachusetts was the first. Then you start seeing other states follow that after that. And as you guys saw, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, you guys saw that in that puzzle in the beginning, a little bit earlier in the school year. Um, so you guys see and how that fire, where 140 females are going to die, this is going to lead to more new state laws to take more safety measures, fire sprinklers, fire escapes, building codes to make sure that if there is a fire, that people can get out safely. So that'll be, a big after effect of that. All right, political. You guys saw this with William Tweed, with that little on how early governments were corrupt, and a lot of these early governments weren't really quite democratic, so to speak. So, so the political reform is going to be centered around how local and state governments how they operate, to fix some of this corruption. So as you guys see here in the slide, this is going to make politicians more accountable to voters by ending the secret by making ballots secret. As you guys remember from that activity where you could tell how you voted on something based upon the color of the ballot. So you might get pressured, labeled, stereotyped based upon what color ballot you bring up because they know how you vote. Well, with a secret ballot, you'd have no way of knowing. All the colors of the ballots are the exact same thing. So that's one step in the right direction. They also will set up commissions with experts, not party loyalists, to fix problems in the cities. So again, you're hiring people for jobs that are based upon merit, not based on who you know or who you owe a favor to. So this is gonna be, obviously a common sense, but a big step in the right direction. So here's some other things that are important vocabulary terms that you're going to be responsible for knowing too. An initiative. This is when citizens can suggest or propose laws for government. So, for instance, if somebody has an idea where they want back in 2014, or I'm sorry, 2004, somebody's like, you know what, let's end smoking in public places. Let's end smoking in restaurants. Well, somebody proposed that, and eventually it'll turn into a referendum. This is where citizens can actually vote on political questions, can vote on laws. So again, the smoking thing, it started off as an idea, started off as an initiative, somebody suggested it, and eventually will go onto the ballot, which turns it into a referendum where we can actually go vote on it. So when you guys are able to vote, you guys will see these on the ballots. You'll see um, referendum number whatever. So this is stuff. These are laws that citizens can actually vote on for their city or township or whatever. Um, so again, you're taking control of democracy. You're taking control of your city. You can have a say so in the law process. Direct primaries. We just went through this past spring, where citizens can choose a candidate to represent the political party for an election. So Donald Trump won the Republican primary, and Joe Biden won the Democratic one. So you guys saw that this past spring with that. The 17th Amendment, you guys saw in the video, this is where citizens can elect senators within their state to represent them. Before that, the local state parties that were corrupt would choose the senators. Now the people can choose. So again, a common sense thing, but it wasn't always done that way. And then finally, a recall or impeach means that you can remove an official from office if they're not, doing job, they're doing morally incorrupt things. All right, and then business and economic reform. This will limit the power and greed of corporations. This will protect consumers for this. You guys saw this with the jungle. So the ultimate goal with Teddy Roosevelt are the ones that are going to end monopoly. So again, very important vocabulary term. The Sherman Antitrust Act will end the use of monopolies. So it'll break apart Standard Oil, break apart these big, huge corporations. The Elkins Act will end rebates for railroad companies. Again, you guys saw this with Rockefeller and Carnegie. They would get rebates from railroad companies to use their products. They'd get discounts on things, and they would use that to wipe out their competition. They were getting an unfair advantage. So the Elkins Act is going to end that rebate system. Another thing that progressives are going to do is to protect consumers. They're going to fight companies that had illegal products that didn't work. So, for instance, back in the day, they used heroin in baby teething syrup, um, cocaine in Coca-Cola, or other drugs. So obviously, we're going to end that practice. And then you guys saw in the jungle, it'll lead to the Meat Inspection Act, as well as the Pure Food and Drug Act, where they're going to inspect the foods, inspect the meat that's being sold in mass consumption. Also, you see this thing, Teddy Roosevelt believed it was each generation's duty to protect the environment. So not only will Teddy Roosevelt be a big factor in, in fighting for consumers and fighting for workers, but he's also be a champion of the environments too. You could also say one of his greatest achievements that he had as president was fighting for environmental conservation. He'll create the National Forest Service, which will obviously be a big deal to conserve lands and resources. And it'll take government control over these lands to make sure that they're being held up to standard and being treated properly. All right. All right. So that is going to be it. All right, fellas. Have a good day and go Middies.